Today I'm going to show you a different way of doing a rack of lamb. And boy, does it taste good. We're going to end up with some beautiful meat and some ribs. This is a typical rack of lamb as it comes from the store and shrink wrapped. There's 8 bones and they've been cut off from the backbone right at the chine there. And you can see there's the ribeye. That's right, this is the same as a beef ribeye. But there's a lot of fat, and lamb fat is just not as tasty as pork fat and beef fat. And of course, if you put seasoning on top of the fat, you're not seasoning the meat. So we're going to remove all this fat, and you're going to be shocked how much fat there is. But what lies beneath is some of the most beautiful red meat you've ever tasted. It's as good as beef ribeye easily. Normally, a rack of lamb is served right with the bones. They carve out the fat from between the bones. It's called Frenching, and that's already been done here. But what I'm going to do is a little different today. I'm going to remove these rib bones and the fat that is right on top of it, and we're going to end up with the eye of the ribeye. Just like on a beef ribeye, there is this longissimus dorsi muscle that runs right through the rack of lamb, just like it does on a ribeye rack on a beef rib primal. What I'm doing here is I'm running my knife right along the rib bones, and then I flip it over and right down where the rib bones are connected to the backbone, the chine, and I slice them off nice and neat. And when we're done, we're going to have an 8-bone rack of lamb ribs. Not going to be a lot of meat on them, but if you grill them up with the ribeye steak we're going to make, they're a wonderful accompaniment and snack. Now, we've got the meat separated from the bone, and you can see there's still quite a bit of fat left on there. So I'm just going to run the knife down the seam between the fat and the meat, and I'm going to take all that fat off of there. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of fat, a little bit of meat attached there, just a thin strip, and I'm going to keep those and set them aside, and we can use them for a stew or a stir fry or for grinding. But you can see here I've got a big old hunk of fat. What's left is a muscle called the longissimus dorsi, or the long muscle along the dorsal or the back of the animal. And that is the same muscle as the eye of the ribeye on a steer. And so we're going to just do a little trimming here. There's this vein of fat running through there, separating the longissimus from a little separate muscle, the spinalis. And we're going to get rid of that. And there's this silver skin, which can be very tough. It's an elastic tissue. It can be very tough and chewy. And when it shrinks as you cook, it can cause the meat to curl. So there's a little bit of good meat laying on top of there, but I'm going to sacrifice it. It'll go into the pile with the meat that we'll use for grinding or for stir fry or for stew. And you can see there's just a very small flap there, and even there's some fat that needs to be trimmed off. It helps to have a really good sharp knife. This is a boner from Friedrich Wilhelm, a wonderful German knife company. And the boning knife is very thin, short, and stiff. Like a fillet knife, only a little stiffer. And boy, this baby sharpens right up. It's a very hard steel, easy to sharpen. I really love my Friedrich Wilhelm knives. And so we're getting rid of some excess fat here, trimming it up, get rid of that silver skin. And we got a little bit of, save every bit of this meat. This stuff's expensive. This is a pretty expensive cut. Not as expensive as a lamb loin chop, which is like a porterhouse or a T-bone. And they're just as wonderful. And that has the strip steak in it, which is also part of the longissimus muscle. But it also has filet mignon in there. It has two muscles separated by a T-bone. And those are called loin chops. And they're wonderful. And we have a recipe on Amazing Ribs for how to cook loin chops. And them and the rack are the two best pieces of meat on the animal. So, just about there, we're going to get rid of that silver skin and that strip of fat sitting on the surface. Just slip the knife underneath and run it along, and it kind of peels right off. And you want to go easy. You don't want to take off too much meat. And almost there now. And we're just about done here. And when we're done, you'll see we've got just about 1 pound of spectacular meat. Cut it in half, and you've got this superb 2 servings. You can just cook it like you would a steak. It's not very thick, and it'll cook fairly quickly. Medium rare to medium is what you want, 130 to 140 degrees. You can put a dry rub or a marinade, and when you're done, you have this gorgeous rack of rib bones and this beautiful pink, tender, juicy meat. So come on over to AmazingRibs.com for our lamb recipes. We have some lovely lamb rubs and a lamb marinade and recipes for cooking rack of lamb and the loin chops and, of course, every other meat under the sun.